Well, hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Helping the Brave. Let's bring in our guest today, Brian Joseph. Thanks for coming in. The internet. I got almost to my other podcast one of those days. Thanks for coming on Helping the Brave.
Thank you, Ed. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I do so many of these. I forget where I'm at sometimes.
That's good. You're busy.
Where are you from? Where you out of?
Originally San Diego. I live an hour south of Seattle now, and today I'm in Key Largo, Florida.
You're in Key Largo, Florida?
That is correct.
Wow. Yeah, I'm in Modesto, California.
I love Modesto. I went to school at UC Davis. We used to do a lot of cattle work down in
Oh, really?
Modesto.
Wow. Yeah, it's a nice little, people call it cow town, but it's not really a cow town anymore. But
Not
I was
anymore.
in San Diego for 20 years because I was stationed in Camp Pendleton with the Marines at the hospital. And then, so I'm used to, and I was down there and then moved back up to Northern California. Been here ever since.
Yeah, we lived in Escondido for 9 years, grew up in Chula Vista, and lived in Redding for a few years.
Wow. All right. So, first question I always ask just to see where you're from. What service and why'd you pick it?
I was in the United States Army Corps, Veterinary Corps. The reason I picked it is they're the only ones to have veterinarians, except for a few veterinarians in the Air Force that only do public health work.
So, nobody does dog work, or do they just get the service done from somebody else?
The Army does all the dog work for all the services. We do all the food inspection for all the services, do all of the zoonotic disease work for all the services.
Wow, I did not know that. That's something new that I learned today. Wow.
How about that? How about
Yeah,
that?
shocking. Somebody my
Yeah,
age learning something new for the first time.
every day.
All right, so you must have did you go to veterinarian school, then went into the Army, or were you ROTC, or how did you do that?
Well, interesting story.
Oh, yeah, tell me your whole story, all right? Go back.
Went to veterinary school at UC Davis, graduated in 1984, spent most of my career in zoos, aquariums, wildlife work, went into the Army Veterinary Corps at 57 and a half years of age. I'm the
Really?
oldest person that's ever gone in the Army Veterinary Corps. I'm the oldest one that's ever came out, had a 10-year age waiver.
I was gonna say you pretty much the oldest one usually because I mean, I know normal service, you can't go in after, like, 28 or 32. They extended it at one time, but that's unusual for 57, wow.
Yeah, it's unusual. At the height of the Iraqi War, 2007, when I enlisted, the age
Okay, let's back
limit
up
was,
again. You enlisted?
yes, sir. The age cutoff was 46 years of age. So I was 55 when I turned in my application. I was rejected after 15 months. I had done a favor for Ross Perot. I told Ross, I don't want to cause any trouble, but I really want to do this. He called General Casey at the height of the Iraqi war and said, why won't you let this young man serve his country? I'm sure that was the most important call General Casey got that day. And then he called General Adams. 2 weeks later, they called me and he said, you really want to do this? By now, it's point of principle. Didn't care what rank they brought me in as. So that's
Uh
an unusual story. I deployed 3 combat deployments.
Well,
Probably
hold
the
on, back up a
oldest.
second. Back up. I don't get through that so fast. We got a
Yes,
lot to
sir.
talk about. I want to back up a little bit. All right,
Sure.
so you must have. So you did. Did you retire before? Out of still working as a veterinarian before you decided to join the military? I mean, is that
Oh
how that?
no. Oh
Okay.
no. I'm still
No, I mean, you were
working.
57. You said you've been doing it forever. So
I have. I have, but I'm still working. I'm 73 now, and I'm still working.
All
So
right.
no,
So
I
all
did
right.
not retire.
Well, because I mean, it was sometimes people will go, okay, I did a lot of people do the military for 20 years, retire, 25, retire, and then take up another job. Could be the exact same job,
Sure.
but you didn't. You did the veterinarian for zoos and everything, and then decided you wanted to join the service.
Correct.
What was the big reason to join the service?
I knew you were going to ask me why. So I've always had a
Okay,
strong
then forget
service.
that question. Let's do something else then.
No, I love that question. So I've always had a strong service ethic. At the time, I was executive director of a nonprofit, the Living Coast Discovery Center in Chula Vista, California. You know where that is.
Yeah, I do.
I
We
went to
called it
veterinary.
we called it something different when I was down there.
I grew up in Chulawana. You can call it whatever you want. So
And
I'm in a
Escondido
veterinary.
was called something else too, but we can't say that.
Yeah, yeah. So it was.
And I was in Oceanside, so that was called something else too.
Well, that's where all you Marines hung out.
I was
So
corpsman,
yeah, so I was
higher
on
form
my
marine life. Yeah.
on my way to veterinary conference in San Diego. It was when the Witch Creek fire was going on, largest fire in San Diego history. So I'm driving down there. I think, there's really very little a private veterinarian can do in the case of a human or natural disaster because you don't have logistics, you don't have communication. Go to the veterinary conference. Army Reserve Veterinary Corps has a booth. They have a dog named Ringo, Belgian Malinois. Can't walk past a dog without talking to him. So I walk up to the recruiter, sit down by the dog. Ringo's done 4 tours in Iraq. And I'm thinking, if Ringo's done this, why shouldn't I? Pay back for the life I've had. Recruiter tells me about all the humanitarian missions the Army Vet Corps does. Talk to him for 2 hours. Call my wife, who's 2 years younger. She comes down. And because she's the best wife anybody could have, she says, I think you'd like to do that. Once I'm in, 11 months after I'm in Qatar for my first deployment. Had a wonderful time. Qatar, Afghanistan, Central African Republic, Djibouti, South Sudan. Had a great time. Privileged to serve.
And so, when you joined and you're enlisted, what does an enlisted veterinarian person do?
Sure. So when you enlist, you don't go.
Because I'm used to doctors and physical
Yeah.
therapists, and those people are officers and enlisted. I was in the physical therapy realm.
Yes.
I was a PTA, but I did everything that a regular physical therapist would do, and then they would come in and sign it. So what?
Yeah. So what a veterinarian does is, well, first you go through basic training. It's not the basic training you went through. It's an abbreviated basic training for medical officers. I came in as a captain because I'd been a veterinarian since 1984. So they gave me some years. So once you're in, what a veterinarian does, you go through some advanced training on food inspection, go through some training on military working dogs, go through some advanced training on zoonotic diseases that affect people. And then you go to a series of courses to prepare for deployment.
No, I thought you said earlier you went in as enlisted.
No, God, no. No, I enlisted.
You
But I
did say
went through.
that. You said enlisted, but I took it as, so you meant enlisted like as an army, as an officer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And through.
Yeah, I was enlisted before I got my bachelor's and master's.
Yeah.
And then people like, well, why don't you stay in as an officer? I'm like, I'd have to be a line officer on a ship. I don't want to be on a ship.
I got a friend he's a special forces medical sergeant. He's also a physician. He's remaining a sergeant because he wants to work for a living. So many people told me I would have made a better non-com than an officer, but that's what I came in as.
Yeah, but your veterinarian can't do, enlisted doesn't do what a veterinarian does. They do what
No,
techs do and other people like that, correct?
that is correct. But everywhere they went, I went.
And so what was overall, you took care of the dogs, I assume, that were working dogs.
That's the most obvious thing. So first deployment, took care of military working dogs in Qatar. Also was responsible for all the food inspection between the Air Force Base, the Army base. Worked with the physicians on zoonotic disease, feral animal control. First deployment. Second deployment, I was in Djibouti, and I was running a civil affairs specialty group that had a real doctor, public health nurse, corpsman, dentist, and we were delivering medical care to the community. Then I moved on with special forces in Central Africa. I was working on livestock. I was going on whatever camping trips they went on, riding around in helicopters, having a good old time. Last combat deployment was to Afghanistan 2019, principally military working dogs, also training all the medevac crews in canine combat casualty care, training the real doctors in canine combat casualty care. So whatever was needed. And then I did 4 humanitarian missions along the way too. 2 in Alaska, north of the Arctic Circle, 1 in Guatemala, and 1 in Belize. So Army veterinarians are a small group, but we do a lot of diverse things.
It sounds like the food and everything, but they probably weren't used to somebody having as much knowledge as you did from the years of being a veterinarian,
Well,
which probably helped out a lot.
it's interesting, and I'm always willing to do everything that's needed. So when I went down with the special forces, some of their first responses were, what are we going to do with the veterinarian? But pretty soon I was doing radio calls, I was doing security, I was going out with them, working on people, whatever needed to be done. So I saw the opportunity. I saw the Army as an opportunity, and I'm a team player. I'll do whatever is needed. And that's the kind of people that do best in the service, as you know.
Yeah. And that's or best in life also.
Absolutely.
It's what you bring, out of the service to make you a better person. You have 2 choices in the military: grow up or get kicked out. Your 2 choices.
That's right. And if I would have went in as a 19-year-old when I was a young crusader and thought I was really smart, probably wouldn't have been a very good soldier. But when I went in, I knew how to solve problems. I knew how to work in chaotic environments. I knew that you give me a goal, I'll find a way to get it done.
How long did you serve?
10 years. I was given a 10-year age waiver, came back from Afghanistan in August of 2019, and my age waiver ran out in September of 2019. Could have asked for an extension, but my lovely wife didn't have a lot to say when I got back from Afghanistan because she knew that 68-year-olds don't go to Afghanistan unless they volunteer.
So, are you still married?
Absolutely. She's the best wife I've ever
I'm
had.
just making sure, you said after that she had nothing to say to you.
Well, I talked to her this morning. As far as I knew this morning, I was still married.
All right, when you came back, what did you I mean, after what else could you do after what you just did there and your whole
Sure.
career?
Sure.
What was next for you?
Well, I never gave up my other job. So I had part-time jobs for aquariums across the United States. I was a Washington State veterinarian responsible for livestock health. And as you know, if you deploy, your civilian job needs to be there waiting for you when you get back. So I came back, didn't lounge around, went back to my civilian job. Still have, I think I have 12 jobs now, and I do volunteer work for a nonprofit. Did a 4-year project in Kurdistan with livestock health, working on getting a project going in Mongolia. So I don't sit still. It's a privilege to be alive. It's a privilege to serve. And I'm not special, but I've had a lot of opportunities, developed a lot of skill. People have opened a lot of doors for me.
All right, before I get into looking back at stuff, you wrote a book?
Written two now. I've had two published. First one is I Wish the Rainbow Bridge Had Visiting Hours. It's about my first 50 years with dogs in my life. The one that was just published about 3 weeks ago is I Wish the Rainbow Bridge Had Fewer Paw Prints. Another dog book. Working on an Army book now. Working on the 10 years in the Army. That'll be the next one. That's going to take me a little time, and I'll probably have to have a little approval from the Army on what I can say and what I can't say.
How long did you want to write books?
I wanted to write books my entire life, and then it's because I'm a storyteller and I've had a really great life. I've worked with really passionate people, really talented people, wonderful animals. Decided finally to sit down and do it about, I think, 3 years ago now. I was in Kurdistan doing this volunteer work, and I had back-to-back rounds of foodborne disease. I was dehydrated, went into shock. On the way to the hospital where I was unconscious for 3 hours, I thought, my runway's getting short. If I don't start putting this stuff down on paper, it's never going to get down. So I started writing, not with the intention of making money. Don't care if I make money. My wife supports it. But I want to get these stories down because I've had a very privileged life, not because I'm special, but because I'm lucky and I work hard.
And yeah, you asked the right person to get you somewhere.
That's correct. And you always fulfill your commitments and you exceed expectations.
What I was getting at is no other time in history has it been so much easier to write a book and get it
That is
published.
correct. That is
Because
correct.
prior to the last 10 years, it was very difficult until Amazon came out with self-publishing and other stuff. You had to know somebody or whatever, and then they would own your rights to your book, and then you can never talk
Absolutely.
about it. Now it's so much easier because I wrote my first one. It came out 2 Februarys ago. Financial freedom, building personal wealth through home ownership. I wrote my second one that I have ready to go, and then I just wrote a third one about podcasting because I do a lot of podcasting,
Sure.
and then I'm working on, a couple of the smaller ones for different little segments of my industry that I do, which is easy to do because there's so many technologies to help you these days. I'm not a good writer. I'm a good talker, but not a good writer.
I get that. I'm a storyteller, but I require good editors because my grammar's not the best.
Right.
And I just start telling a story. I don't do an outline. My publisher, he's the son of my attorney. He's written some bestsellers. He said, from now on, you got to write an outline. You got to get yourself organized. So that's what I'm doing on the Army book.
Yeah. And there's so many things that can help you with that, like ChatGPT, other things to help you get your
Right.
words down, how you help you with stuff. And it makes it so much easier because, I'm I grew up dirt road poor and I was not an English major. That was not my thing. But I've learned how to talk and I can talk.
Hmm.
In my first book, I had a ghostwriter. We talked, we did everything, and she put down it in my words. And it
Right.
was easy to do the second book because I knew exactly how my words were and I didn't have to have that ghostwriter for the second one. But there's nothing wrong with having a ghostwriter because
There's not.
you can just look at it like it's not people looked at it like they wrote the book. No, they
Mm-mm.
took
No,
your words and then put them in the right order that we couldn't do.
that's correct. They edit your content, they put it in an organized manner. So if you've got stories today, all it takes is motivation and discipline, and you can get it down. And if you're lucky like I am, where my wife says, you can spend as much as you need to writing books. I don't care. You work all the time. And I say, thank you, dear.
All right, so if this is what you do for work, what do you do for play?
I take fish in the ocean and I turn them into freezer pets. I eat fish probably 3 days a week. And I've got two dogs, lovely wife, spent time with them, and a lot of exercise, a lot of great friends. When I almost died in Kurdistan, I made the commitment that wherever I go in the United States, if I'm any place near a friend or someone that's been significant in my life, I'm going to spend time with them. So I'm down here in Key Largo with a fellow and his girlfriend that I spent 20 years doing bottlenose dolphin field work with. So I stayed 2 extra days after a conference just so we can go out in the boat, so we can visit. Because when you walk out that door, you don't know if you'll ever see somebody again. And you have to value those friendships.
All right, so you are where you are right now. Do you live
Hmm.
there?
Oh, no, I live in Gig Harbor, Washington.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so you're in Washington. And how did you I mean, it sounds like you've been all over.
Hmm. I
And
have.
huge difference between Florida and Washington, because I'm in Modesto, California, and
Sure.
I hate humidity.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a stint in Texas for 3
Hmm.
months, and it was during the summer, of course,
All right.
and when people go, "I'm moving to Texas, and you should move to Texas too,
Oh,
or
no.
any other place," I'm
Mm-mm.
like, "No, because you have this thing called weather that I don't have to deal
Right.
with." Humidity is
Right.
the and you have these bugs that are really big, and they could you guys have screened-in porches for a reason.
The bugs will carry you off.
Yeah.
The humidity and heat doesn't bother me as much as I lived 3 years in Winnipeg, where in the winter it was -30, -40. Didn't like that. And my wife will never forgive me for taking her there and then leaving for 8 months to Africa with the Army. So, like I say, she's the best wife I've ever had. I better keep her.
Yeah. See, I lived in Colorado as a kid, so I had my negative during that period of time, that's
You
why.
did.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm used to, like today, I'm 50, our high is 51.
Right.
Low was probably 47. There's days we'll get in the negative, but not snow. If I want snow, I drive up to my cabin. Eh, so,
I
and then
get it.
yeah, you know how it is. All right. So we talked about what you've done. What we looking back, what was there anything you would have changed or anything you wanted to do that you still haven't been able to do?
That's a great question. And I think about that all the time. About every 2 months, I reevaluate my life. And about 2 months ago, I had a health scare. And I thought, if I only have a year left to live, what would I do different? I thought, would I go see my kids? And I said, no, they don't come and see me. They talk on the phone. And I thought, I've got my friends around, I've got my family around. I've been lucky to work all over the world. I've worked with wonderful people. So I've got regrets. Most of my regrets are about how maybe I could have treated somebody better, but I always put it in a place of comparison that if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So I don't look back and say, I do look back and say, well, I could have done better at this. I could have been a little easier to live with when I was a kid, but I don't look back and say, gosh, I wish I would become a banker because I can't work inside. I'd be the worst banker in the world. I couldn't be an accountant. I need to be outside. So I think I was put on a good path. When I was very young, I figured out why I was here. I was here to take care of people. I was here to take care of animals. I was here to try to make the world a better place. It's that simple. and I thought about what really defines me. And the three words that define me are empathy, curiosity, and humility. And I try to evaluate what I do by those three words.
All right, since you brought it up, how did you realize what you wanted to do as a kid?
It was I was always interested in animals. Couldn't have them much when I was home. Did 2 years, dropped out of college. Did 2 years of construction work. Had the opportunity to go to work part time as San Diego Zoo as an animal keeper. Then stayed on 5.5 years. Then went to SeaWorld as an animal keeper. But the day that I went to work at the San Diego Zoo was the best day of my life because I found out that day that I had the ability to care for animals, work around animals, understand animals. And it wasn't hard for me. It was easy for me. And I didn't care if they talked to me. I just enjoyed being around them.
So when you said as a kid you couldn't have animals, so you didn't have a dog, a cat, fish, any kind of animals like that?
I had some fish when I was 10 years old and my dad threatened to leave the house. So, no, I could not have animals. I was always interested in them. I always wanted to have a dog. And that's probably why when I left home, I've had dogs ever since I was 18 years old, as many as 6 dogs at once. So one of the core principles of my life is anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And so fortunately, my lovely wife puts the brake on some of my great ideas.
Yeah, but sometimes people bring home what they deal with at work.
And my wife was a zookeeper. She used to own her own elephant, and
Wow.
we
I
had
so you didn't tell me that your wife was in the whole zoo stuff. Yeah.
she was before I met her. She owned her own elephant. She owned goats. She owned a lion. She owned jaguars. She traveled all over North America with circuses. And when I met her, she was an elephant keeper.
Alright.
And I had a rule with her, and that was that after 6 o'clock at night, we didn't talk about work. And the good news about her being an animal person is she's never taken exception to me having to go take care of an animal. She's never said, "Why aren't you home?" She's never said, "You ignore me." She's never once said that. She knows what needs to be done, needs to be done.
Alright, so I gotta ask this question because you said
Mhm.
it for a second. How did you meet? How did you guys meet?
Sure. So 2 out of the 3 wives I've had, I met at zoos. So I tell people that 66% of the wives I've had, I meet at zoos. So I moved out to Washington, Point Defiance Soon Aquarium. She already worked there. She'd been there 3 years. I thought she's pretty darn cute, but you're gonna hear a good story now. I was determined I was not gonna get involved with anybody I worked with. So she came over to a party 2 months after I got there. She hasn't gone home for 29 years. And that's probably why it's worked out because I tended to be attracted to, let's just call them train wrecks. And she's a wonderful person. She's level headed. She's smarter than I am, makes good decisions. She raised my 2 kids as a single parent, and she took them from hooligans, from feral children, to decent human beings.
Kinda like Joe Dirt's not Joe Dirt, the NASCAR one,
Except for the
Ricky Bobby.
profanity, except for the profanity, they were Ricky Bobby's kids.
Yeah.
They were bad news. And when she started staying with us, I left for India for 2 weeks of work, 5 days after she came over, and they tested her. They were 9 and 12, and she told them, she said, "I don't care if you like me or not. I'm here for your dad." And she made boundaries, and they are closer to her than their own mother, and they give her credit for turning their lives around.
Yeah. I think it's important that kids need boundaries, kids need structure. That's why the military does so well for people.
I agree, and I'm a big advocate. I've been an advocate even before I was in the military, that we would have a better world, we would have a better country, that when kids graduate from high school, they either do 2 years of public service or they do 2 years of military service, and they would learn that it's not all about them, and you could give them a free vocational training after that, free college, don't care, the world would be a better place.
You're totally right. Yeah.
It'll
Yeah.
never happen.
No,
It'll never happen.
no, because it just won't. Um, and so the people who pick the right way to go, they change their life and everything's better. Because I saw that with myself. My son's in the army right now. He's a medic. He was an airborne medic, but he gave that up after hitting a tree. So
I don't blame him.
yeah. But he was one of those snowboarder crazy guys.
Sure,
He
sure.
when he was a kid, that everybody said he had no regard for his safety when a ball was around. Um, it was totally
That's
true. Yeah. So
that sounds like me growing up. I can relate to that.
yeah. But see, for me, I had every animal you possibly could have as a kid
Mhm,
because my
mhm.
grandparents had a dairy, and then we had 3 acres after my dad died of hairy cell leukemia, which
I'm
I call
sorry.
dirt road oh, thank you. Dirt road poor, and we had the 3 acres,
Sure.
and I raised steers. We'd raise 2 steers, sell 1 to for the other one to be chopped up, and they had
Yeah,
every type of bird, anything I ever wanted, I could have. And
right.
so I got to a point where for years, I never had a dog or anything because I didn't want
Mhm.
any animals. I had to take care of them all the time.
Sure,
And now
sure.
I finally have my own dog again, which I found on a trail by my house. It was tied up to the exercise equipment 3 Februaries ago at like 8:30 at night. And some people were out there asking whose dog is this. And so I brought him home and cleaned him up. And 3 days into it, he came out of his shell. And I'm like, okay, well, you're not going to the the Humane Society at all. We'll just call them and tell them we have you. And of course,
Mhm.
they waited 2 weeks to call us back and said he's yours. Well, he wasn't going to go with you anyway. But it's just where that's my problem is I enjoy animals, but I don't, I'll help them, but I hate to put myself in that situation because I know I'll help them.
Well, you're an empathetic person, and he found you,
Right. I
and
know.
you did the right thing. I mean, he was there for you because you needed him to be there, and you've given him a better life, and he's given you a better life.
He became a very spoiled dog.
Mhm. Oh,
It's like those, it's like
my 2
those,
dogs now are the worst dogs I've ever had
yeah.
because I'm near the end of the road. They're very loving, 2 Bernese Mountain Dogs, and I can't make myself discipline them. They're just too fun.
Yeah, so he's American, 100% American bully, which was shocking that he was that much of a purebred. But they looked like he had been used as a bait dog. He has a mark on his head. And, so I took care of him, put a chip in him, took his balls, of course, make him normal. But
Mhm.
then we have a Rottweiler who is a female who, runs the roost because that's how female Rottweilers are. So.
Female Rottweilers or females in general? What are we talking about here?
I'm just talking Rottweilers. I don't know what you wanna do. You can get in trouble all you want. I'm gonna stick with the Rottweiler.
All right.
That's how but again, I mean, my wife never had an animal her whole life, and
Mhm.
I've been in the mortgage industry forever, and during 2006, 2007, there were so many people losing their homes through
There
short sales.
was.
And so I negotiated short sales for everybody in town pretty much because nobody knew how to do it. And it was just like doing a loan. And when this one couple, I went over there to talk to them because I even went through counseling to teach people, the life coaching and all that. So when I talked to them, I could help them through the process.
Right.
And they had this Rottweiler Chow German Shepherd mix that was bit by a little dog. And so she bit that dog back and they were like, okay, well, that cost $1,500. So we're going to have to get rid of her, put her down. I'm like, before you do that, let me talk to my wife. And
Right.
so, so brought her home after my wife met her. We brought her home and that was the best dog and the first dog my wife ever had. And when my wife would run, the dog would run with her. If there
Sure.
was somebody around her, it would come up and hit her
Mhm.
hand.
Oh,
The
yeah.
dog was trained so well. It was ridiculous. And that was like what she was used to. And when she passed away because of cancer, she's like, I don't want another dog. And of course that
Right.
was like, you know, 2 months later, there was another dog, another
Yeah.
rescue, of course. Yeah.
Got it. That's good, but they're good for us. They're fur children. They take good care of us, and, they ask much less of us than they give us. They leave a hole in our heart when they pass, but I think the balance is in our favor for what they give.
All right. So we talked about your books. We talked about your story, what you're doing. We
Mhm.
talked even about how you met your wife. Uh,
Mhm.
so the Army book's going to be about your story that when you were over there during your deployments and the different things that you
Right.
saw, I assume.
Right, that's exactly right. It's gonna be 1, it's gonna be about how I got there. 2, it's gonna be largely about military working dogs, and it's also gonna be about some of the other missions that we do, some of the other things we do in the Army that people have no idea, and most importantly, it's gonna be about the animals and the people I worked with. I was blessed with working with, wonderful soldiers, some, Navy personnel as well, Air Force personnel, Marines, and as you know, there's no more loyalty, there's no closer bonds than you can have with the people in the military. And I don't think everybody understands how much loyalty there is between people. I mean, right now I've been out 4 years. My mom died 2 years ago. Told my soldiers, 2 of them are ready to drop everything in their life and be there for me. That's not how most civilians are. That's not how most of your family is.
Not at all.
No, so they're like my sons. They call me dad. They call my wife mom. And they still come to our house. Some of them live in Texas, some of them live in Nevada, but they make a point of coming to our house at least once a year to see us. So those bonds never go away. And part of my role as an older officer was to try to make them not only better soldiers, but better humans and let them know that they could be much more than they thought they could be.
Were you the oldest person to go in the military?
I am the oldest veterinarian that
Okay.
has ever joined, and
Who's the
I'm the
oldest
old.
person who ever joined?
I'm not sure, but I know of a. I was told there was a National Guard physician that worked with Special Forces that was he was 71. I was told
Wow.
when he came out. So I don't know, but I've been
I
told
mean,
that I'm
came
the
out, but going in. I'm talking about when you go in.
he went in way younger. So I'm the
Yeah, but I'm
oldest one
talking
that,
about who's the oldest person to go in.
to my knowledge, I am the oldest person that's ever been allowed in the military,
Yeah.
and that was due to Mr. Ross Perot because
Right.
I did
But
a
I'm just
favor
saying
for
that
him.
that's a huge thing I mean, of course, you probably went that in your book, but you talked about how you like Modesto. I
Hmm.
don't know if you've heard any of the stuff that I did, but last year, April 12th and 13th, I did a Operation Firewalk, which
Hmm.
was a Tony Robbins style event end of the night where you walked across coals. We're doing it again
Sure.
May 3rd,
Ow,
2025. Huh?
barefoot.
You don't hurt your feet. Unless you stop. You just gotta
Okay,
take that first step, you'll keep going. But we're
absolutely.
having a couple people, a couple motivational speakers. It'd be nice to have you there to tell your story a little bit. I don't know if you talk about it at all or have a speech on it at all, but, because I don't think people understand what people do in their life and how important service is for people.
Right. It's very important. Send me the date. So the
May
reason
3rd,
it's May 3rd, I'll try to make
2025.
it. The reason it's important is I said, I'm not special. I'm not brilliant, but I was born in the United States. That gives me, my parents didn't have money. My dad was a construction worker. I've worked my whole life, but I have more than 99% of the people on earth. And that carries a responsibility with it to help people in our country and to try to make the world a better place. And I won't say you can do anything you want. I can't play in the NBA, but the sky is pretty much the limit. If you're motivated, you do the right things, people help you along, you go through the right door. Sometimes you go through the wrong door. I've made big mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes. So, yeah, if I can come, I would love to be there. I love
Yeah,
Modesto.
yeah. I mean, it's people amazing. It changes how people think. I had my grandson walk, 7 years
Hmm.
old, and, it changed his life. It changed his mom's life and my daughter, and we had a bunch of people there. This year, it's gonna be it's just one day this year, and then we'll have a lot more people, but, it's an event that that was very motivational for people and get them out of their funk and help people. Because my big thing was helping people with PTSD, even get
Right,
and that my goal eventually for what this thing's gonna be is pretty big, and it's from other people wanting it to get bigger and have different
right.
things. But right now it's just a couple speakers and speeches, and I'm trying to narrow it down. So it's gonna be out January. So
Okay,
operationfirewalk.com will have who it's gonna be January 1st out there January 2nd. Um,
sure.
yeah. So I
Tell me more. I'd love to be there to help if I can help.
Yeah, I'll keep you in the loop. I'll add you to the mailing list.
Because, like you, my goal is to let people they can be more than they think they can be. They just got to put in the work.
Yeah, and I think you would be good at that because for what I mean, people don't think about what they can do, and later on, they're like,
Hmm.
"I'm too old, I can't do that." They do,
Well,
people think that.
I know they do. So I earned a master's degree in 2021. I went back to graduate school when I was 67 years old. Whoever does that? I was the oldest person that went to graduate school at University of Florida in their forestry and conservation program. Felt funny. Everybody else is 21, 22, but I enjoyed everything about it.
When my wife was in nursing school, there was a 50-year-old woman going through nursing. So,
Just a kid.
Yeah. Well, now it's just a game. Yeah. I mean, now it's totally different too. I mean, how the age group and how people look and how they take care of
Right.
themselves is totally different than it was 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, that's right. If you think back, let's say 30 years ago, I'm 73 years old. If I was 73 30 years ago, I'd be done. It became over. I wouldn't still be doing work. I wouldn't be writing books. I wouldn't be out working for NOAA yesterday, finding a satellite buoy in the water. I wouldn't do any of those things. I'd be sitting in a rocking chair or in an old folks home. So I figure I got another 10, 15 years of activity left, and I want to fill it up.
All right, Brian, it was really nice getting to know you and getting to know your story. Thank you so much for coming on here and telling everybody about your story.
Thank you for your invitation, and I look forward to hearing about Firewalk, and I do not want to walk a football field.
It's not a football field.
Okay. It's nice talking to you.
It's only as a short walk across Cole. It's not very far.
I believe you 100%. Thank you, Ed.
All right, everybody make it a great day. Thanks for being here.
You take care. Bye-bye.